pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we proceed, our town clerk duties will be performed by our town manager. He tells me that he's qualified.
We'll see.
Kathy's out today on personal business. Can we have approval of the minutes, March 16th, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. At this time, if there's anybody here with new public business that's not on the agenda, please raise your hand. Mr. Bradstreet? Welcome. We missed you.
Bill Bradstreet, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I brought this up once before, but I want to bring it up again. The Select Board meets tonight. It's an important meeting. The people who follow town business want to attend this meeting. They don't want to listen to it. They want to attend it. This is one board of several that the town has. Each board has an agenda and a reason for being. I find it very troubling that on occasion, two boards meet the same night, the same time, in different locations. I find it troubling to try to decide which one is the better of the two to attend, and what am I going to miss by not going to the one I choose not to go to. I'd like some help here. Maybe it's just me because I'm old, but I'd like to have all the meetings separated so that you can attend when we can attend all of them, or attend and watch while we do now, but separately, not trying to monitor two at the same time. I'm not computer literate to the point where I can put a computer on and watch one thing while I'm someplace else, and I don't think you'd want me watching a computer while I'm in here at this particular meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Bradstreet, thank you for your concerns. They're well-founded, and I'll ask the town manager to work with his secretary to put together a list of the town meetings, their times and dates that we can review and see if we can't eliminate the overlap and duplication. I can't speak for the other boards if they'll want to change or not, but we'll take a look at the schedule.
I do appreciate it very much. Thank you. As long as you tell me you're working on it, the biggest thing.
If I say we're working on it, we're working on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else with new public business? Thank you. The board will vote to proclaim March 21 to April 30th Motorcycle Safety Awareness Period. Mr. Town Manager, is somebody here to speak to this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe Paul Cote is here on behalf of the group that he represents to address the board.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Please announce your name for the public at home.
Yes, my name is Paul Cote, and I'm from Amesbury via Salem, with an office in Peabody. With me tonight, Lee Blaze, Danvers, Jason Blaze, Danvers, and Lee King, who lost her husband, Jay, last year in a motorcycle crash. Back there, raising his hand, I'm State Director for the American Motorcyclists Association, and also one of the co-founders of the Massachusetts Motorcycle Survivors Fund. Several years, Nelson's Ride had come through Danvers, which is a major fundraiser. But Dennis Palazzo here has been with us 18 years, helping local families of motorcyclists killed or seriously injured in accidents. The governor annually proclaims the last week of March through the end of April as the Commonwealth's Motorcycle Safety and Awareness Period. And we go to cities and towns and we ask them, especially when there's been a fatality, for the period to put up on the public safety buildings the signs to remind drivers that the motorcyclists, 17,000 in Essex County, are coming out of winter's hibernation. So we would ask that the town of Danvers follow the governor and the mayors of Amesbury, Gloucester, Medford, Weymouth, Waltham, Peabody, and just proclaiming or resolving that citizens, on behalf of, you have 775 registered bikes in Danvers. Okay? And if Lee or Jason or Lee, want to say something, I yield. No?
Well, thank you, Blaze brothers, if I may call brothers, and Lee, thank you for coming tonight in support of this. And Danvers would be more than happy to have a proclamation read. And I'll ask Selectman Trask to read it.
Thank you. Happy to do so. I actually am a member of a registered motorcycle group with the MMA, the Falcon Riders. We used to do poker runs for the PME, for the school band. Town of Danvers proclamation, whereas the motorcycle is a popular means of transportation for commuting, for touring, and for recreational purposes, and whereas there's an ever-present need for cooperation among drivers of automobiles, trucks, motorcycles, bicycles, and pedestrians who use our streets and highways in order to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities. And whereas it is crucial for all Massachusetts citizens and visitors to our area to increase their knowledge of the rules of the road and the rights and responsibilities of all roadway users. And whereas there are hundreds of motorcycles owned and operated by our fellow citizen bikers, homeowners, and residents of Danvers, and the tens of thousands more visiting and touring our town from neighboring communities and states. And whereas numerous departments and organizations are committed to making our streets and highways safe for all motor vehicle-related transportation, urging and reminding drivers to check twice, save a life. Motorcycles are everywhere. Now, therefore, we, the Select Board of the Town of Danvers, Massachusetts, join with the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and all agencies and organizations to proclaim April 6th through April 30th, 2021, as Motorcycle Safety Awareness Period in the Town of Danvers, and wish all who ride and enjoy a safe riding season.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you very much. Scott, you want to take the proclamation? No, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. The board will consider an appointment to the Danvers Housing Affordable Trust. Now, this is a selectman's appointment. Selectman Trask is chairman of the Danvers Housing Affordable Trust. Gardner, did you have a few words to say about this application?
Yep. Just to let you know, with the retirement from the board by Don Gates, we had an opening, and we petitioned the we went and looked at the talent pool documentation. We asked members who, of the trust who were active in the community to recommend any applicants. We heard from, I believe, 2 applicants. And from that, we then selected the applicant before you tonight.
All right. John, do you want to go to a microphone and say a few words, please? Introduce yourself to the community, in case somebody doesn't know you.
Good evening. Name's John Jack Syzinski, graduated Danvers High in 1981. I'm on the board of directors at the Danvers Y. I've been active in the community since my kids. I have 3 kids that graduated from Danvers High School. So I've always been in coaching and sports, either playing myself or involved with my kids. I've been in mortgage banking for going on 37 years. So I have a lot of experience dealing with subordinations and the trust issues that the town will face. In fact, I've faced a couple recently from the Housing Authority. So it's a pleasure, and I hope I can bring something to the table, and I'll serve you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and thanks for coming tonight to introduce yourself. What's the will of the board?
May I have the privilege of moving the appointment?
Thank you. Second from Bill, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you, Jack, and good luck. Look forward to you working with the board.
Thank you.
Number 5, the petitioner is unable to make it tonight, and he asked that we table it, so if I could have a motion.
I move we table the vote to accept a gift in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, thank you. Number 6, a public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the general laws in the application of Texas Roadhouse Holdings LLC, DBA Texas Roadhouse, 301 Newberry Street. John C. Marasco, manager, for a change of officers and directors of an all-alcoholic common vicular license at that location. Is there someone here to speak to this? Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrew Upton for the licensee. We are requesting tonight the approval of a change of officers. Mr. Gerald Morgan has been appointed as president, and Mr. Kent Taylor, who was the president, we have proposed to elevate him to the CEO. The wrinkle in this is that Mr. Taylor passed away last week. So in order to continue processing this without undue waste of time and filing, we contacted the ABCC. They suggested that we just make Mr. Morgan the president and the CEO, since he's already been reviewed and done his core reforms and he's the subject of the application, and delete Mr. Taylor from the paperwork. So they had us send a letter to the ABCC explaining that. They had us send a letter to you explaining that. And it is my hope we can go forward on that basis. It is only a change of officers at the headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky, and there's no change to any aspect of the operation here in Danvers.
Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, is everything in order?
Having spoken to Kathy, I can report that the paperwork is in order. She indicated this was going to be a corporate change, no change locally, and she was satisfied with the paperwork.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Anyone in the public with any questions, comments? Hearing none.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Is there a
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just, normally I would ask about the manager, but I understand the manager of the license is remaining as such, so I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the application as amended in the discussion.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you.
Number 7, a public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the general laws in the application of Sonesta International Hotels Corporation, DBA Sonesta Select Boston, Danvers, 275 Independence Way. Jennifer Betancourt, manager, for a transfer of all alcoholic common viculars license at that location. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Betancourt. I'm the general manager at the Sonesta Select. We're requesting a change of corporate management, although the on-property team stays the same. It's just moving from Myriad International to Sonesta International. And I've been there since 1999, so as far as my team and I at property level, everything is the same with our certifications and running of the restaurant.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, the paperwork's in order?
It is.
Thank you. This public hearing, any questions from the public? Hearing none.
Make a
any questions
motion, we
from the
close the
board?
public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, again, this is a corporate change. The manager remains the same. I have no questions. So I move that we accept the application as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Betancourt. Number 8, a public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the general laws on the application of Toasted Brothers Danvers LLC, DBA The Friendly Toast, 50 Independence Way, Danvers. David Gillis, manager for an all alcoholic common vicular license at that location. Somebody here to speak to this? Please go to the microphone, introduce yourself.
Good evening, Board. My name is David Gillis. I'm here to represent Toasted Brothers, Inc. and an acquisition of liquor license.
Speak up a little, please.
In regards to a liquor license transfer from Applebee's on Independence Way.
Everything in order, Mr. Manager?
It is.
So this is a transfer from Applebee's to the Friendly Toast.
I believe the town had acquired the license back, and we took it from the town.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on this one?
Mr. Chairman, again, I'll ask, because this is a new enterprise, could David Gillis is the person to be on record, has tip certified since 2019. And I'm trying to, and I can see by the resume here, I don't know if Mr. Gillis is here or not, but.
He's speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you just give us a little information about your background?
Yeah.
As a server and/or a manager of licenses in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually a 15-year resident here in Danvers. I'd worked with several restaurant groups in the area, a group out of Salem for the better part of 15 years, Fins and Sea Level restaurants down there. I've actually owned my own restaurant up in Ipswich for approximately 5 years prior to joining these folks at the Friendly Toast. So my experience is pretty much all over the place in the business. I will be the manager on record. I will be the manager with his boots on the ground at this location. And so I'll be there full-time, 45 hours plus usually in this industry.
Have you been the manager of record for other licenses for some of your other entities or organizations?
I had, yes. I was part of the license. I was on the license for Salt, which was up in Ipswich.
And of those organizations that you were the on record as being the manager of the license, were there any issues or concerns
No.
that came up during that time?
No.
Thank you very much. I see that you're going to, you say you're going to be there 45 hours a week, and that answers all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the board have questions? Hearing none, this is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience with questions?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. What's the will of the board?
I move we accept the application as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, Mr. Gillis.
Thank
Good
you very
luck.
much.
Number 9, a public hearing will be held under Chapter 138 of the General Laws on the application of North Shore Variety and Liquor LLC DBA New Bridge Variety and Deli, 9 Bridge Street, Carla Calhoun, manager, owner, for a transfer of ownership of wine and malt retail package store license at that location. And please introduce yourselves.
Thank you, members of the board. Sean Began. I'm an attorney with offices located in Medford. Thank you for having us today. And this is Ms. Chalhoub. She can introduce herself.
Good evening. My name is Carla Chalhoub.
Welcome. Tell us what it is you'd like to do.
This is an application for a transfer of the package store wine and malt beverage license as part of a purchase of the real estate in the store, convenience store and deli that's currently located at that location. We're asking for approval of the transfer.
So there's no seating capacity in this?
No, there's no seating capacity. It's just a walk-in deli and a convenience store.
Okay, thank you. Paperwork's in order, Mr. Manager?
It is. The one note that Kathy offered to me today is that the application itself says that the manager will be on site 30 hours and that may have been a point that the board wished to discuss with the applicant.
Would you repeat that louder?
In the application itself, I believe it indicates that the manager of record will be on premise 30 hours a week on average, and the town clerk simply raised that as a point that the board may want to look at, knowing that the board typically likes to ask that specific question.
We'll open it up to questions from the board. Bill?
No questions. I'll let Gardner answer that question.
Okay, Maureen?
I have no questions.
David?
Thank you. Where is this, 9 Bridge Street? Is that on the way to Beverly?
It's on the intersection, right on Bridge Street, like on the intersection right before you get on the highway.
There's a gas station at the intersection. You go to the right in Bridge Street.
Corner of
Down
Brad
there.
Street.
Gotcha, thank you. No question.
Gardner?
Yes, thank you. For the manager, Carla Chalou, have you worked in in this environment before where you've sold alcohol, been responsible for alcohol sales?
Not in this industry, no, but I've owned and managed my own business for 19 years almost, so I'm pretty capable of keeping up with rules and regulations and maintaining all the laws.
And what are the number, how many hours a week will the store itself be open?
Around 60 to 70. We're not sure. We're thinking of trimming them down on the weekends.
I think that the town clerk is right in reading my mind that 30 hours, less than half the time that the store is open, is a little bit short in my mind, because who do you plan on having?
We have a full-time assistant manager.
Speak
there
into the
that's-
microphone, please.
We have a full-time assistant manager that's also TIPS qualified, and she's going to help me manage the place as well.
They're maintaining continuity with staff so that they're keeping on a woman who's currently there in a full-time capacity, who has worked there for a number of years and is also TIPS certified. So there will be some continuity with a second, in addition to Carla, another person who has a lot of experience already at this location. Carla's prior experience at the business that she's been running for 19 years does also sell cigarettes, so she is familiar with the concept, and that would go with a regulated product in selling it to the public.
Okay, so I appreciate the regulated product part. Part of this is, especially the TIP certification, is to recognize not only underage people, but those who might be inebriated and shouldn't be served.
Sure.
Can you provide assurance that either the manager of record or this other person will be on duty, that there'll be no other non-TIP certified person selling alcohol at this store?
Yes, that is the intention. If they were to hire an additional person in the future, the town would be notified, and the police department would be notified per the alternate manager listing sheet.
Okay, I have no more questions. Thank you.
So, excuse me, I heard you say you would notify us if you hired somebody else. I think we want to be notified if the second person leaves immediately.
That's, if that's what the board wishes, then that
If that's an
certainly can be
emotion,
done.
then-
And if there is a substitute for that person who's going to be a manager, and that the person who's there now is going to leave, we can certainly notify the town. That's not an issue.
Any other questions from the board? No. Okay. Nope, it's a public hearing. Any questions from the public? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept
Can we
the...
close the public hearing, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Mr.
Make a
Chairman.
motion, we close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So I'm willing to hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman, for this application, I'd like to make a motion of approval under the following conditions: that liquor sales be done only by a TIPS certified person, and that those who are going to be serving or selling alcohol be registered with the town as alternates on the license.
And that the town is notified immediately upon,
And that the town is notified immediately upon the, if someone who is
Any
TIP
change.
certified leaves, there shouldn't be any sales, that it doesn't come from the hands of a TIP certified person.
all right with that, board members? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? You're aware of what the motion is? There's no problems?
Yes, all sales by a tip-certified staff member. That's perfectly understandable and acceptable.
And if there's change to the people who are that all those tip certified people should be registered with the town, and if any leave, you should notify the town.
Yes, we've already filed, in regards to the woman who will be staying on, we've already filed the alternate manager form with the town clerk. So if there's any change to that, we will definitely be filing a new form to update the town and the police department.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none. Thank you, good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you. Number 10, the board will hear an update from staff on the downtown pop-up park. Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aaron Henry, Director of Land Use and Community Services, is plugging in. He has a short slide deck for the board and the audience, and will provide an update on what he and his staff have been doing to engage downtown stakeholders since our last meeting and the last update on the topic.
Thank you, guys.
There's 4 of them.
What is it?
There's 4 of them, David.
There's 4 of them.
Sorry for the delay, everybody.
Welcome, Aaron.
Just making your, good evening. Thank you for having me. Hopefully this, oh, there it is. It's warming up. Good, maybe. Just a short visual aid just to kind of go over what we've been working on. So, and I apologize, it was probably 6 weeks ago we were here before you to discuss some, making some changes in front of the CVS for a kind of a seasonal, and I think in the aftermath of that meeting, it became clear to staff that we perhaps were not as transparent about the seasonal nature of the request. And so again, I want to underscore that what we were looking for was a summer or warmer weather temporary establishment of some open space, community space in front of the CVS plaza there. That's currently 13 parking spaces. I think the board wanted to hear a little bit more about some of the outreach that we were doing. And again, to kind of restate what happened, we had applied for a grant. The grant was announced in a paper before staff was told that we had been awarded the grant. So in a kind of chicken or egg problem, we determined to go to the select board as quickly as possible to inform you that we had been awarded the grant and what the plan was, and the outreach was going to be conducted shortly thereafter. In another scenario, we probably would have attacked that a different way, but it was kind of sprung on us at the last minute that we were awarded the grant, so we figured we should come to you all first. So since that time, we did do some outreach downtown. I'll be candid with you, it was a bit of a mixed bag. There's plenty of support, and there's a few businesses that aren't crazy about the idea. No one seemed to get too upset about stomping mad, and some of the businesses that we were told were opposed weren't as strongly opposed as I thought, and their reasons were quite varied. So I would say it's a mixed bag on what the businesses were looking for. So we did do that, and I also want to say for context, the idea of this arose organically. We did not come up with this idea. We did obviously apply for the grant, but to speak more broadly to the community, in a number of the rezonings that we've done downtown, going back to the 2017 40R zoning at the other end of downtown, this idea of creating more open space downtown has kind of been floating around since then. And during the last change, we had, I think, a charrette on a Saturday in 2018, and that piece of real estate in front of CVS was identified by our attendees as something that should be converted to green space. And we felt when COVID came around, the state offered these grant opportunities to install pop-up parks. You've seen them around, I'm sure, if you've traveled outside of Danvers in the last 2 or 3 years. You have seen these installations around. They're becoming very successful. Boston's North End is going all in on these. So they're around. And the state's provided us funding to pursue a park here locally. But we also did want to do a little bit more digging around and do some other strategies that we thought we could look at downtown, and we did make some revisions or are proposing some revisions for you all to consider tonight to kind of refine our idea. So the last time we got a state grant for downtown, we got a $10,000 grant, I think in 2016, 2017. When I started in June of 18, we were just wrapping up a wayfinding signage program. We've never been able to implement that, and under this work, we want to start to make some of those changes. So we have the sign design package, we have the locations as to where those signs were proposed to go back then, but we've never had an impetus to move. And I think because we're potentially subtracting some parking from downtown, this is the perfect opportunity to pursue that. Since that time, we have the 40R money for downtown, so we have some funding available to do this. So that's something we want to pursue with this, so make sure that cars aren't just cruising around the square needlessly. There is some signage down there today, but I think we can make some enhancements to that so that people can find that parking even easier than they can today. We also want to look at some of the news boxes, and again, this is a little bit of my pet peeve, is walking around downtown lately, we seem to have a collection, we seem to be collecting some kind of like apartment rental boxes and some other kind of leafleting boxes that are just kind of gathering dust at this point. And again, I know there are particular issues around regulating those, so we're not trying to kick anybody out that's using them regularly, but there are definitely some around downtown that are in disrepair and appear not to be used. So we want to clean that up a little bit. And also kind of, I know the post office has been reducing and moving some of their boxes around, so we want to make sure that we're paying attention to the streetscape and where those boxes are and where they're moving to, and make sure that their bases, I noticed the post office has taken the box but left concrete boxes, like the concrete base. We want to make sure those are all cleaned up for those trip hazards to be removed. And also we've been working with DPW on trash and making sure that we're going to put the bins in the right spots. We have some downtown that aren't particularly well used. We want to move those to areas where we need more trash pickup, especially if we have more activity around the CVS Plaza area. So again, a little bit of the outreach when we were talking to businesses, and it's probably a little hard to see here, and my cursor won't work quite right. Maybe this will work. Here we go. So the one thing that came out, and this is a question for the board tonight, should they wish to proceed, is the businesses, a couple businesses suggested that this is currently 1 hour parking, that we change that to 15-minute parking, on the theory that a lot of these parking spaces in front of the CVS Plaza are used for quick in and quick out. We're comfortable with that at the staff level. We think that's a great idea. And again, this would be seasonally while the while the pop-up park is in place. So we're supportive of that, but again, that's something that we did not put before you the last time we were here. We also noticed that, and this probably is a vestige from when you could take a left or a right out of this area. You could probably add a parking space right there on Conant Street at the very top. I think if you were trying to take a left out of there, that parking space would be in your way, but it's a right turn only now. So we would think we can add that parking space back in. And then similarly, and again, this is a bit of a contentious issue on another policy front, but the MBTA 465 bus has been suspended, and that appears to be an indefinite suspension. I know there's talk at the legislature right now of trying to restore some of those services, but should the 465 remain suspended for this summer while this pop-up park is in place, we would like to see this area converted back to on-street parking. And if you pay attention there now, you will see the parking boxes are still there, a little grayed out, but there are 4 parking spaces there. So that should help mitigate the loss of these 13 parking spaces a bit, but more on that in a moment, because again, we're not proposing a one-to-one replacement. And we understand the value of these parking spaces and what they bring to downtown. So we did a little quick analysis. The red circles on this image are 250 feet, and the yellow are 500 feet. And we did it from each end of the parking aisle. So basically at, it's Charter Street, I'm drawing a blank, and Conant Street. So we did 2 circles at each end of this little park. Within
250 feet of either end, we have over 75 on-street parking spaces. And this is not counting side streets, this is just on the main drag. And within 500 feet, we have a little over 200 parking spaces. So again, and then there's all the private lots and the side street parking. So we're not trying to minimize the value of those 13 parking spaces, but we do feel that the conversion of the space to outdoor seating that can be patronized by many people, we can get more people there, obviously properly spaced and socially distanced, but we have a little room for programming. But we think that we can add more vitality and activity right now, and we think that's especially important given the restrictions around COVID, and that we think we can provide that, and we think we've got a good program, and hopefully tonight, with your support, we can move ahead on accepting this grant. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Bill, questions?
I still have concerns about the losing of 13 prime parking spaces in Danvers Square, and remind the planning department that in fact we were not allowed to have parking on Maple Street at that location originally, and because of the desperate need for parking downtown, the town several years ago applied for, and I believe got 5 spaces along that section to the south of the flagpole. I appreciate the fact that you've worked with or you're considering the MBTA area. However, there's not many businesses that are close to that would need seating, except for maybe the tavern. I just can't see losing prime parking spaces downtown on a regular basis, and I know that 2 of the businesses are very concerned, and I wonder if you've actually contacted the owner of that block where CVS, Panini, and the bank is, because they were very concerned and had talked to me about that loss of parking.
Yep.
They do have the unique situation that at the back of the building, they own parking on themselves, and except for the bank, the other 2 businesses make regular use of that back parking.
Yep. We've been in contact with Bill Kaplan and Steve Lewenstein. I spoke to Mr. Lewenstein yesterday.
Aaron, I can't hear you when you're talking.
I'm sorry, we've spoken to the property owners multiple times, up to and including yesterday.
And what is their response?
I think their response is more caveated than they let on, and I'm not trying to talk out of turn, but they have other issues going on with that property, and I think their concerns are bigger than this parklet right now.
I just have a concern, going back several years, that on several occasions, the planning department, previous people, have accepted projects or have promoted projects that have necessarily not been in the best interest of the town. It seems that things are thrown against the wall, and whatever sticks, they come forth with that as that project. And I'm not saying that this project is like that. However, I am saying that I consider it somewhat similar to other projects that we've turned down in the past. So I'm not really in favor of this at this time.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes.
just a brief response to the concern that Selectman Clark raised.
Mr. Bartha, could you move your microphone
So,
closer?
yes. The concept here was discussed as part of the rezoning effort leading up to the February 2020 town meeting. In our zoning book, this area is shown potentially as green space. So it's not a concept that started with the grant. The state has put $60,000 on the table if the town wants to experiment with this space. We can certainly give it back. This is optional. This is discretionary. And the idea, based on the feedback on the almost unanimous adoption of the zoning, was whether this was something worth experimenting with in the summer coming out of the pandemic. So I can't necessarily comment on prior planning department efforts, but this is not one that materialized out of thin air. It was as a result of years of discussion with town meeting members and community members, and it can be done without Danvers taxpayer dollars to see if it works or if it's a disaster, frankly.
Thank you. David?
I'm a lover of Danvers Square. I remember Nesson's department store and Almies and Kirby's Market and all these businesses that have passed, and it's a new Danvers Square from when I was a kid. I've heard some rumor, I don't know where I heard it, is that CVS might be moving up by Central Firehouse. I don't know that that can be taken into account for purposes of this. If this is a summertime trial to see if it might work, it feels good to me because people love that Kathmandu across the street. I don't know, hundreds of people go there to talk and have coffee, and I don't know how they fit them all in there. So I think it's something that people in Danvers would like to do. They'd like to try it. I understand that the parking has always been a concern to me down around there, but I think it's well thought out, and I'd like to support it and ask others to support it because it is temporary, and it's not costing us very much except the loss of those parking spaces, which is indirectly a cost to the town and to the business customers who use that. So I think it's worth giving it a try, and I'd like to see it happen.
Thank you, David. Just before we go on, Aaron, you didn't mention anything about the parking at the end of the bank. Are there not 3 or 4 spots there?
Yeah, yes, there are. On this here?
Well, correct.
Yep. There's 3 parking spaces right there.
Okay, and how many on the other side of CVS?
In the CVS lot?
On the side on Conant
On
Street.
Conant Street?
Yeah, between the bank and CVS.
I apologize, I didn't count those, I counted them for that
There's quite a
slide,
few,
but-
and I'd make the casual observation that they're not fully utilized on a regular basis, from my observation. So,
And there's about 12 there, I think, all told on both sides of the street.
So that there is other parking surrounding the building. Correct?
Oh, yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Maureen,
So I-
questions,
Aaron,
comments?
just question.
Yep.
Trial basis, we said, right?
Yes,
We want to use grant money naturally.
yep.
Do we have to give up all 13 spaces? Can it be half?
We talked about that, and again, we did some internal conversations with our own police and fire and emergency services, and we don't want to put pedestrians, so there's no grade, so this is all at grade. We're not doing any curb work or anything like that. So what you'd be losing is any horizontal break between the pedestrian and the vehicle. And that's probably a really bad situation. And we specifically talked about maybe trying to preserve the spots all the way at the far end, maybe the handicap parking space. And now we're talking about pedestrians and perhaps not the safest drivers on record. So we felt it was either all or nothing because we feel like that mix would really be a bad idea. And again, because there's because of the spacing requirements, we'd probably lose functionally over half of the space because we need the drive aisle and the room there. We did work with police and fire to make sure that the barricades that we're talking about are easily movable for them. But we did not feel like it was safe to bring cars into that space. But we did explore it.
Okay. And my other question is, we talked about the time frame. I don't think I like the hour, time frame on there. You get businesses, for parking, 15 minutes,
That you don't like,
No, I don't like the hours too long. I'm thinking of the businesses that have, right, Bill, like the pickup, you go in and grab a pizza, or.
that was a suggestion from Panini.
Yeah.
Was talking about making that, because he says a lot of his customers are popping in and popping out.
Popping in and out, right.
And maybe addressing that change on the street that remains would kind of mitigate that loss. And again, we're comfortable with that. We think the turnover could be a good thing, but that's a change from what we brought to you in February. So if that's something that you want us to do, we're happy to do that.
I would like, maybe some of them, hour parking, but not all of them. I just feel for the businesses that do have those customers that pop in and out, to hold those spaces. That's all for me, Dan, right now.
Thank you. Gardner?
Sure. Have you abandoned, or are you still considering the temporary spot on the other side at Kathmandu?
Yes.
How many spaces will that absorb?
1.
Just one? Okay, so it's 14 spaces we have to accommodate. And I'm for the program, I just think we need a little more tweaking. I'm gonna pressure test because I had the same idea that Maureen had. I'm gonna recommend that the first 3 spots and the last 3 spots be left, and you leave 6, and you take 6 as temporary in the middle. I'm gonna pressure test the argument about pedestrian traffic. You're gonna cause the same exact pedestrian traffic issue with people trying to get into their cars when you do a temporary spot in front of Kathmandu. People still have to walk into the street where there's passing traffic. I don't think it introduces any more concern than currently happens in that parking lot. People park, they cross. If you're concerned about drivers driving through, that's a concern you would have now today. I think that if we're gonna do this as a temporary basis, then let's do a trial. Let's do 6 spots. Preserve the handicap spot, which is another question I have. If you remove the handicap spot, where is the closest handicap spots to downtown? I can see 2 pictured on behind what would be the Brothers, and there's 1 there and there's 2 there.
Four on this lot, and there's 1 on Alden Street.
Okay. That's a considerable distance. When you're talking about me walking another 200 feet, not a problem. I get it, I understand. If I'm gonna walk from where the bus terminal is, or bus stop is downtown, I've got no problem. Handicapped people don't have that opportunity. I also noticed that the ones that you've identified are not striped for handicapped vans.
There's no on-street standard for
No, but you have ones in the lot in the
accessible.
back, and you have stripes on the one in front of CVS. CVS, and that's actually been a discussion point I've been asking for years, that we actually paint the striped areas, which are striped white, but left as asphalt, with blue to identify that as a handicap van accessible location. You don't have any handicap van accessible locations in downtown at this point other than that one. So I think it's a concern. I'm suggesting that you go 3 down from the handicap and 2 more, and 3 from the bank, because are the landlords that you've spoken to the same as the business owners?
No.
Okay, so my question is, how does the bank manager feel about the fact that the only entrance into their bank, they don't have, they have semi-blocked access? Same with Panini. CVS has a back entrance, and I get that. I can understand and mitigate that. But the other 2, I'd like to hear from the owners of the businesses, not the building landlords or owners. I think they have a voice or a seat at the table. We all have received emails from at least one of those business owners saying, please consider us.
Yep.
I'd want them considered. And so,
I have spoken to the bank manager personally. We went down and talked to Mr. Salvo.
Speak up, Aaron.
I talked to the bank manager personally. David Fields and I also sat down with the Salvos at Panini, and again, I can't speak for those individuals. I would say the Salvos had a myriad of concerns. One of their objections was this was not a permanent installation. One of their concerns was the loss of the hit-and-go parking and the suggestion for the 15 minutes. So I don't know that I could give you a mind or a view of the businesses themselves versus the property owners. And again, I think the property owner has a very different perspective on this because they own the property. They are aware of other development proposals in the square area that might affect their property, and they are concerned about that. So it's tough to...
But I would focus on this project and the impact. And so I guess I'm gonna just pressure test the fact that I appreciate the building owners have a seat at the table. I think equal or more weighted is the seat of the landlord or the building owner has a seat at the table. I think that the businesses affected have a stronger voice at the table. And I'm just concerned. So a couple more things. I want to make sure, I said it last time, I want to make sure it's reiterated. I'll say it a dozen times. There should be nothing, no tables or anything placed on the island itself. That has memorial bricks. I know that currently there's a temporary town sign on there.
Oh, yes.
And I choose to pick my battles. I'm not fighting that one right now. I know it's temporary, it'll go away, it's got a good public service message. However, I don't want that to be a open door to using the actual location.
We never had any
Okay.
intention of using that space. That's our kind of
Okay.
built-in buffer.
I'm not in support of going to 15 minutes. There are businesses down there, there are restaurants down there, seated restaurants. There are dress shops. There are other businesses for which 15 minutes is not conducive to their business. I don't mind, when you talked about moving an hour to something less, is it only the ones along the street to the south of the island, or is it throughout
Yes.
the square?
Just the segment highlighted here.
Okay. I would be supportive of 30 minutes, but I would not be supportive of 15. I think that, I can tell you honestly, I go into Kathmandu and sometimes I wait more than 15 minutes to get my coffee because it's a popular place with a long line. The same thing with the bakery. I might be placing an order. Same thing with Hong Kong Cafe. People sit down there. I would not support 15
That was a
minutes.
suggestion from the business owner that we just went and talked to, so
One of them.
I'm happy to
Yep, one of them.
do something different.
Yep, I'm suggesting that it should be, I don't mind going to 30 minutes on those, whatever, 6 or 8 spots, but I think 15 minutes is too short and actually takes away other business owners' opportunities. Will this, if we move this to 30 minutes or something less than an hour, I don't know, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town manager, are we going to return traffic enforcement to the square during the summer?
Well,
Parking enforcement.
we have traffic enforcement in the square. So this-
Parking enforcement.
I mean, that exists today.
Okay, I didn't know if it was suspended.
On a limited basis.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a part-time function, but that didn't stop.
Okay, thank you very much. So, and then I'm in favor of 6 spaces as opposed to the whole thing. Maintain it, we have to accommodate for a handicap van replacement if you go forward. And the other issue that I think I directed someone to you, Mr. Henry, was the, if you go down to Salem or others that do the similar program, the Jersey barriers are decoratively painted, and I'm hoping that that
We
can
have-
also be accomplished.
We have identified an artist we would like to work with for any of the street furniture features that would otherwise be bland.
Very good. All right, those are my comments, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Al, would you go back to the slide showing the number of spaces in the 2 different radii?
Whoop, I'm going the wrong way.
Thank you. Go over that again, please.
So, the center of each circle is either end of the parking of the drive aisle, so far end of Santander and the far end of CVS. The red circles are 250 feet from that point. The yellow squares are 500 feet from that point. On-street public parking, inside of the red circles, we have a little over 75 parking spaces right there on the main drag. I didn't go to any side streets. I didn't go too far down, like in the side of Santander. Within 500 feet, we have about 200 plus parking spaces, again, just on the main strips, not going down side streets. And I put the number of parking spaces in the lots that are captured in these circles as well. And then there are some private parking spaces within this area as well, but didn't count that because we can't necessarily regulate or control that. Obviously, CVS itself, as has been pointed out, probably has one of the biggest parking lots downtown and is adjacent to our site.
What lot is the one indicated with 42 spaces?
That's the High Street lot, the one across from the Berry Tavern, kind of at the atrium, I guess is the right.
That's the atrium.
Yep.
Where is the one by the old Beverly Bank?
34 spaces.
34 spaces. That's off of Page Street.
Correct.
Thank you. And that's within the, what radius?
That's within 500 feet.
500 feet. So I happen to spend a few minutes daily going to CVS, the post office, Zolo's maybe once a month, the Chinese restaurant, et cetera, so I walk around. And I observe, I'm a good observer, and I observe people walking, actually from the parking lot on Page Street down to CVS. We cross the street together. They come back, or they go into Panini's. So they're not afraid to walk 500 feet to pick up their lunch, to pick up their whatever it is at CVS. So I don't think there's any hardship by taking away those 13 spots. To leave a few spots, I think would be troublesome because we don't enforce the no left-hand turn coming out of that lot. People take a left-hand turn out of there many times in the course of a day, which is dangerous in itself. So to leave a few spots and to allow that bad behavior to continue would be detrimental to pedestrians and to any of the people using those seats. It's really all or none. We have to close it off, utilize it, and prevent people from parking in there and creating issues. The 15 minutes I kind of think makes sense because there's always somebody jumping out of their car to run across the street to get their coffee, but to Selectman's Trask point of 30 minutes probably makes more sense. Because you can't get in and out of those stores sometimes in 15 minutes, especially if you're a popular person and people want to talk to you. It's even more difficult. What input from the fire and the police did you have on eliminating spots and creating seating there?
Yeah, that was a surprise for us. Working with the board's regs from last summer with a number of businesses and working closely with fire on doing outdoor seating in and around town. And again, we've had probably about a dozen businesses avail themselves of those, of that opportunity. Traditionally, we've been requiring quite a robust break between outdoor seating and vehicles. So in the grant application, we assume that would be the case here. So we spec'd out large concrete planters or bollards, something that would look half decent, but operate like a Jersey barrier, be heavy enough for a vehicle not to smash through. And much to our surprise, their objection to our plan was that they wanted something lighter that they could move if they needed to get in there in case of an emergency. So we do have in our design, there would be some picnic tables in that drive aisle. They were okay with that. They're like, our guys can move those out of the way. We can't move a 500-pound planter. So we've revised based on their conversation to something less heavy that they can jump out and move. We can decorate and make sure it looks right, but it'll prevent cars from coming in. So that was an interesting twist. We thought we were gonna hear something different from them, and we spec'd it different, but pleasantly surprised that we could accomplish what they're looking for, and it's not as expensive to do.
Okay, great. So I'm in favor of trying this. It's seasonal to start. You don't know what other kinks you'll get until you actually implement something and try to work through it. I would not be in favor of the one spot across the street until we go through a season with this setup to see how that works. And then to enlarge it or not, depending on the response. The 30 minutes is fine with me. I think there's adequate parking within a reasonable distance of these businesses. There is going to be some turnover in that CVS building in the future. I've already had people tell me they're concerned that the store is closing. I don't know for a fact that it's closing, but that's between CVS and their and the landlord. But I think that's town-owned property, and we can make better use of it with something that's attractive and will encourage people to visit downtown and support the other businesses. Basically, that's what it's there to do. That's what the outcome will be. So I would be in favor of this to try for a season and see how it works out.
And staff is comfortable without the space across the street.
The staff is comfortable without that. That's fine. Yeah, I don't want to go there just yet. I'm not comfortable with it. But this project that you're proposing, I am in favor of.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There are a number of points that are being offered and suggested and offered and suggested, and there has been varied discussion amongst the members. And I realize we're not taking a vote with all of the things that are being discussed, but I wonder if we don't do a straw poll on the various points to give an indication of how the board members feel. And again, majority rules, so if the board members feel all 13.
So I'm not going to take a straw vote, so to speak, but everybody's welcome to give their opinion on that they're for it or against it, or in some manner
Sure.
Altered. So we'll start down at my far right with Selectman Mills for his thoughts.
I'm very comfortable with what you have outlined, Dan, and I think we should give it a try, and I think it shows an awful lot of thought and effort on behalf of our planners. And I'm a lover of Danvers Square, and I think that this is worth a try.
Thank you. Gardner?
I can read the will of the board, I believe, and I think that if you're going to absorb all 13 spots, if it's all or nothing, then it should be all. However, I would ask that you find a replacement for a handicap van accessible spot, whether it be in the lot where there's 42 spaces, whether it be one of the other lots. I think that's an important aspect of the parking. I also am going to recommend that if you change the time on the parking on the other side of the flagpole island, that it be no less than 30 minutes. Thank you.
And I'll concur with those 2 points. The 30 minutes is reasonable, and certainly the handicap spot is more than necessary.
And I meant to mention also the use of the MBTA spots should go ahead.
I have mixed feelings on that, and Aaron will have to work with the MBTA on that, because in a recent meeting we had with State Reps, Senator Lovely, and staff from MBTA, they kind of asked us to wait a little bit before we grab those 4 spots. They acknowledge that they took down the 465. They state that they're going to look at many sites over the summer. They didn't promise to bring it back, but they did ask us, am I right, Aaron, to wait
Yes.
a little short time?
Yep, and I've got a follow-up call in to
Right, and there's going to be a
those staff to
follow-up
make
meeting,
sure
so
that we're on the same
I think
page.
that one's to be determined.
Thank you.
But
And one last.
it's being addressed.
Okay, then I'll back off of that one. But one last thing I'd ask is, can we define dates? Warm months, summer months, can we say, and I'm making this up, June to the end of August, or whatever we decide, but I think we should put framework around the timing.
We were originally hoping, the kind of the warm season there's April 15 to November 15, but I know that that's a big stretch. What we're hoping to do at this point, given where we're at and that we still have to procure these services, or these goods, we're hoping to have it in, if the board approves. We'd like to get it in before Memorial Day at this point. I mean, realistically, the lead time on ordering this stuff is like everything else in COVID times. We're probably back ordered. So hoping to get it in by Memorial Day, and we were hoping to do a status check around August 1st and see where we stood at that point and how long we want to go with it at that point.
I think 6 months is a bit of a stretch. I would think that October is starting to get on the cool side. I would recommend we end no later than September, but that's a recommendation.
Just to follow up on that, many areas stay open till Columbus Day.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Topsfield Fair in October, so October's an okay month to some degree. So, but they'll let them evaluate it.
That's fine.
Nobody's
Again-
using it, you'll shut it down.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, if it's not doing what we want it to do, then we're not going to drag this out.
Thank you. Maureen?
Hi, Aaron. I'm in favor of it, definitely. I think it's great. I like what Chairman Bennett has said and Selectman Trask. I do like the 30-minute window. I said the 15-minute, but you're right, though, with more thought. If there were a few of them for 15 minutes, but like we said, either all or none. So I am in favor of it. I like what Selectman Trask said about define the dates, May to October, something like that, like a seasonal, type thing, but it, like we
It's
want.
May 15 to October 15, I mean,
Yeah,
basically,
that's
we'll
like,
say,
usually seasonal cottages or condos are like that, but let's, like we said, this is new and it's exciting, let's see how it goes, but, with those, certain, about the timeframe, the minutes, and like we said, the barriers, we want to make sure, safety, and the handicap's big too.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Bill?
Thank you. I will say a couple of things that I'm very strong about is 30 minutes is an appropriate time, I think. A compromise would work well. I definitely want to see a van accessible handicap spot placed at a location that is off a main street, so you have 3 parking lots that you can choose from that. But it's got to be a high profile, nothing put down, for example, down on the lot by the town hall. It's got to be one of these 3 spaces that we have immediately in this downtown area. I honestly haven't seen people using the van handicap spot for a van, but I know that it should be there, and we shouldn't be taking away that from the town. I think if you're talking seasonally, you should be talking from the 1st of April until the 1st of November. This much like they do in Boston for the restaurants there. And there's opportunities that could be used outside up until the 1st of November, I would think. However, I'm still not going to vote for this, but these are the inputs that I had if we did go that way, and it looks like it's going to go that way 4-1, so.
If I could suggest too, we generally meet once in August as a board. We generally don't meet in July, but we reconvene in August. So we could make a plan in August to come back and provide an update to the board and make a decision at that point about how it's being used and what the board's thoughts are in terms of the fall, in terms of when we want to shut it down.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, we're all set? Thank you for your input, board members. Aaron, are you all set?
I'm all set. Thank you for the conversation, really do appreciate it, and we hope this is a success. We believe it will be a success, and when we come back next time and talk about it, hopefully everyone else will be in agreement.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Number 11, we will get an update on the May 4th annual town election and request that the board vote to set early voting hours. Mr. Town Manager / Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have my crib notes here from the town clerk, so I'll do my best. We do have a local election, May 4th. The election will be held from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the field house, once again allowing for social distancing. The last day to register to vote is Wednesday, April 14th by 8 p.m. And you can register to vote online, or there are voter registration cards available outside Town Hall toward the left side of the building. The governor signed an extension of the 2020 temporary changes to the Massachusetts election law due to COVID, extending vote by mail for municipal elections to be held prior to June 30, 2021. Applications for vote by mail can be found on the town's website. Completed signed applications can be scanned back to the town clerk, and we have a generic email address set up for that. It is townclerk@danversma.gov. Once the ballot's completed, the best way to return it is by utilizing the drop box at the bottom of the front steps to Town Hall or by U.S. mail. Ballots must be returned to Town Hall no later than the close of polls on Election Day. The last day to request a vote by mail ballot is April 28th at 5 p.m. In addition to vote by mail, communities also can optionally include an in-person option for those municipal elections. And we've had internal discussions and would like to hold an early voting for one day in the Toomey Room, set up as was done for the September primary last fall and the November state elections. Kathy's looking for a vote by the board to designate Town Hall as the early voting location to be held on Saturday, April 24th, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And there is a motion that was provided by the town clerk for the board to consider this evening. And I would be happy to try to answer any questions you have, but in all likelihood, that would be the extent of my abilities to pretend to be a town clerk, and I'd have to follow up after speaking to Kathy.
Thank you. Questions, Bill?
No questions. I'm in favor of this motion because I do feel there are some people in town still, and the town doesn't consider this all the time, that are not computer literate, do not have computers. There's a whole generation of people that are 70 or older that have a great deal of difficulty with that, so we must make some provisions for people who are older who do not have computers, or don't have computers because of the economics of it.
Thank you, Maureen.
I'm in favor of what the town clerk has proposed.
Thank you, Gardner.
I'm also in favor.
Thank you. David?
I'm in favor, and I have a motion that
Please.
was prepared by the town clerk, and I would offer it now, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please, go right ahead.
A motion to designate Town Hall, 1 Sylvan Street, as the in-person early voting location for the May 4, 2021 annual town election. In-person early voting to be held on Saturday, April 24, 2021, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, none, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did already have a call this week from somebody, we're gonna have early voting. I said, we'll vote on it Tuesday night.
I told her the same thing. She called you then me.
Yeah, I know it. All right, thank you. Number 12, the board will vote to close the warrant for the May 17, 2021 annual town meeting. I don't think we need any explanation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The warrant is closed. Number 13, the board will review a draft of the May 17, 2021 annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board would have received a draft copy of the warrant with their agenda packets on Friday. And from me this evening, you would have received a single sheet of paper in the supplemental material that was provided, which includes a warrant article that was not included in the draft warrant that was mailed Friday. That article is to be inserted toward the end of the warrant, so it would become the new Article 29. That's a home rule petition being submitted on behalf of Danvers Electric. And the current Article 28, which is the fiscal 22 budget amendments, will become Article 29, the last item in the warrant. And we can review the home rule petition when we get to it in the order of the articles. So, Mr. Chairman, what I would do at this point is walk the board through the draft warrant. Many of the items in this warrant we reviewed as part of our budget workshop on Saturday, March 13th. That was a new approach this year. So a number of the capital projects, the buildings and grounds improvements, the tech warrant, the capital outlay, we went through with the DPW director on Saturday the 13th. We can certainly take follow-up questions on those, but I won't spend a lot of time reviewing those this evening because we did already review them in depth on Saturday.
So board members will hear the articles for the special town meeting and vote on those three at once. And then we'll hear all the annual town meeting articles and vote at the end. But if you have any questions going forward, just speak up to the town manager. I'm not going to call on everybody individually. Okay? Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 3 articles in our special town meeting. The reason we vote for those as a special town meeting within the town meeting is so that the effective date of those votes is upon passage rather than waiting for July 1st. The first of those 3, this is a standing article, is unpaid bills. This article requires a 9/10 vote at town meeting. This is to pay bills that were submitted by vendors after the close of the prior fiscal year and were not processed prior to the statutory deadline, and therefore require a vote at a subsequent town meeting. This is a lengthier list than we typically see. These probably look very familiar because we actually reviewed these in the fall when we were preparing to have our zoning town meeting that we ultimately canceled as a result of a spike in COVID cases. The one item that was not on the fall list is the $2,072 due to Milton Cat out of our DPW other auto. So the reason for the length of this, like everything else these days, last summer, when everybody was navigating COVID, a lot of the bills either weren't submitted on time by the vendors or on an AB staffing schedule, we might have missed the deadline by a couple of days. So it is a fairly lengthy list. Most of these are routine purchases made by departments for carrying out operations associated with their services. So the finance director and I would be happy to take any questions you have on this. but we would be looking for a motion to recommend the town meeting approve these.
We'll have the other two and then vote.
Okay. The second article is budget transfers. These are dollar amounts that need to be moved from one departmental budget to another, or from one section of a departmental budget to another in order to close the fiscal year in the positive. So we vote our budgets in Danvers. We take two votes on each departmental budget. We vote the salary and wages, and then we vote the operating. And those votes essentially authorize departments and finance team to spend within those appropriated amounts. So in the event that a department requires a transfer in for an unexpected cost, we have to make a transfer. So there are four this evening for your consideration. The first is a $12,500 transfer from debt interest payment to the fire operating budget. The fire department last year obtained a grant with a matching requirement to replace 50% of their handheld radios. This was a capital expense that we would have otherwise incurred in full. Because the grant opportunity came mid-year, we are looking to transfer the $12,500 into the fire operating, which is where the funds were expended, so that we can close the books in that department. The second is a $25,000 transfer from police personnel to police operating. This is to cover the cost of the assessment centers that will be conducted later this month for the ranks of captain and chief. After the retirement of Chief Ambrose around the holidays, and then his untimely death, we have an acting chief at this point, and we have an assessment center scheduled actually for April 14th. So candidates from the rank of lieutenant and captain will be sitting for that assessment center. The third is a $20,000 transfer from department head budget to administrative services personnel. This is a transfer to cover the promotions that were made when Jill Summit and Kathy Ellsworth stepped out of their roles as assistants and into their roles as the town clerk and the treasurer collector. So we were using some of the residual funding from Joe Collins' salary prior to his retirement in the 21 budget to cover the promotions that were made, and this transfer will rectify both of those budgets. And the fourth is a $130,000 transfer from sewer retained earnings to sewer operating. This is related to the emergency repair that was made over by the Meadows after the culvert collapse that impacted the rail trail. These repairs are being made equally between electric, general fund, and sewer, because each of those service areas relies on that right-of-way for various services that are rendered. And so there's a requirement with respect to the sewer to make that transfer from retained earnings into operating to close that out. The last is...
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, Mr. Chairman, through you.
Yes.
Mr. Town Manager, why the transfer from these various accounting and not utilizing why wouldn't we utilize the FinCom reserve fund?
So generally, the FinCom reserve would be used for expenses that are not available elsewhere. But more importantly, when the funding within a particular department budget is sufficient to make a transfer to close that department out, that's generally the first place we go. It also gives town meeting a chance to weigh in. Normally, the FinCom reserve is used between the time of town meeting and the end of the fiscal year. After you've disbanded your town meeting, you wouldn't want to have to call them back to make transfers like this. So in the event that we know about these going into the town meeting, it just historically, we've put them before the town meeting.
Okay.
Operationally, at the end of the year, it wouldn't make any difference. If
Yeah.
if the FinCom were used, these funds would fall to free cash and vice versa.
Okay, I can understand the last three being interdepartmental transfers from one of their bucket items to another of their own bucket items. The first one, debt interest going to fire operations, just, I'm thinking, if it's debt interest, we're taking away an income source that we have. Couldn't we reapply that
Not
someplace?
interest in the terms of interest earned, but the interest that we're obligated to pay. We pay the principal and the interest on our debt.
Okay.
And based on the timing of an issuance, we have surplus we're going to have some funds left at the end of the year in that budget, so it's,
Very good.
that's
Thank
the
you.
rationale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I would note, actually, Selectman Trask mentioned the FinCom reserve. You'll recall that last year, this board made a recommendation to the Finance Committee and Town Meeting that we reduce the Essex Tech appropriation by an amount equal to the adjustment that would be made if their budget were in keeping with our own. No budget adjustments were subsequently made. We are by law obligated to pay the assessment in full, so there will be an item going before the FinCom on April 12th to release $95,000 from the FinCom reserve to pay our fourth payment to Essex Tech.
Thank you.
The third article here, the State Public Works Grant. This is an annual vote. The reason we do this as part of the special town meeting and not the annual town meeting is so that we can start our roadway improvements in the spring and not have to wait until July 1st. This gives us a chance to get a jump start on the work in the spring. There's a typo in the draft warrant you received. It is not a $20 million supplemental appropriation. It's the $200 million annual appropriation. We'll have that cleaned up in the draft that will go out to the FinCom later this week. So this language was from our June 2021 town meeting when additional funds were proposed by the governor on top of the $200 million. But the $889,000 is our prorated portion of the $200 million anticipated bond authorization for this purpose.
So the 889 is an additional to the 200?
No, I'm sorry. You can ignore the first sentence. What it will read in the next version of the draft is that in anticipation of the $200 million bond authorization, we're looking for town meeting to approve the 889. The first sentence is going to be deleted. That's a holdover from the last warrant. There is no $20 million supplemental.
Okay. All right. Any questions? If not, we'll take a motion to pass these on favorably to the FinCom. To a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye as well. All right. The next annual town meeting.
So the first item on the annual town meeting is the election of officers. We don't have a list for tonight. We do need to move this article on. Historically, we provide the list of names closer to the town meeting. And I was talking to Ann Freitas today, so we're working on, there will be some changes this year to the list of officers, but we'll have a draft set of recommendations for the board at one of the next several meetings. But for the purposes of tonight, the vote would be simply to move this forward to the Finance Committee. Article number 2, no vote is required as this was voted on March 13th. We reviewed each of the departmental budgets in detail. Article 3, a vote is required here simply to advance the budget. This is not a vote to approve the budget, which was developed and approved by the Municipal Light Board, but this is a vote to send this budget on to the Finance Committee. Mr. Chairman, is your wish to vote at the end?
I wish to vote at the end,
Perfect.
is what I said, yep.
Thank you.
And just keep moving right along.
Okay. Similarly, Article 4, we received a presentation from the superintendent and the school business manager from Essex Tech. So the language here reflects the budget that was proposed and presented to the board. Article 5, this is an annual vote simply to allow the collector of taxes to do their statutory job and use the various collection tools allowed to them under the law. Article 6, the annual town reports were mailed out to town meeting members in, I believe, January. There's a requirement to accept that report each year at town meeting. Article 7, the technology plan. We had IT Director Colby Cousins on hand on Saturday the 13th to walk us through what is being requested this year by the schools, the library, and the town. Articles 8 and 9 we reviewed on Saturday related to the phone system upgrade. One of the points that was made is in a follow-up email there were some questions about the system itself. The majority of the funds here are used to replace the back end, so the network itself, and not necessarily the devices, which are relatively new and many of which can be reused on the new system. Article 10. DPW Director David Lane was on hand to talk to the board about the pavement plan for the spring. Article 11, we did not discuss on Saturday the 13th. This is an annual article prepared by the town engineer, Stephen King. Each year, he and his staff, just as Rick Rogers before him, would go through and work to prepare private roadways for acceptance by town meeting. And this year is no exception. So you'll see within the body of this article the roadways that are ready for layout and acceptance this year are Avon Road, Holly Lane, Sunset Avenue, and Vineyard Street. I believe each year Bill Bradstreet asks if we're ever going to reach the end of this list, and the answer is maybe. We will eventually get to the thorny dredges of the list where it may not make sense to pursue acceptance. We're working on it, Bill, and we'll get there. We'll get close. Article 12, we also reviewed on Saturday with the DPW director. Article 13 as well, emergency connections related to the water system, as well as Article 14. Articles 15, 16, and
Just like, if I
17
may,
also.
Mr. Town Manager, on
Yep.
14.
Yes.
Let me look at my notes. Article 28, May 2014, we, back on the back sheet says we have a balance of 130K not spent. Is that correct, towards this?
You're looking at the balance of, at the very back of the warrant?
Yeah. It said that there was a balance on hand. Did we spend that?
Do you want to, I'll call the finance director up to the microphone.
Article 28, May 2014. There was appropriation. It says we have balance 130.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I won't speak for Engineer Stephen King, but I believe the plan is to use that balance in addition to the new funds being appropriated to complete the project. So the 130 will be
is
spent as
still there,
part
and
of
it's
this.
going towards this project, which
Correct.
brings up the total appropriation of, to what?
Dan, can you show me which page you're looking at?
On the balance of, again, the print is too small. Page 18. Is that an 18? Page 18, halfway down, state hospital valve replacements. You appropriated, there's 130 as of June 30th, 2020, still shows 130. Is that towards this project?
So, the finance director is correct. I actually don't have page 18, which is why I'm flipping around. But typically what the town engineer would do is when we will often fund projects like this to do feasibility work and testing necessary to get a project number. If the town meeting had previously voted to appropriate funds that are in a capital account for the same purpose, he would come back and the supplemental appropriation would be for the balance. So what's being requested here, the $345,000, would be spent alongside the prior appropriation to complete the work that's being proposed.
So does 130 come off the 345? or
I
is that
believe
an
it's on top
addition?
of the 345. That's correct.
So you're actually looking for 215?
No, I'm sorry, so it'd be 345 plus the 130.
Plus
would be
the
cost of
130.
Yep, so 475.
Which has already been approved.
Correct.
So the actual cost of the project is 475,
Yes, sorry for the confusion.
correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Article 15 is part of our annual flushing and cleaning of the sewer lines. We go in and inspect and make repairs. That benefits us when the SESD is determining our annual assessment based on flows and loads. Article 16, we reviewed on Saturday regarding upgrades to the Lakeview Booster Station. Article 17, likewise, was discussed on the 13th. This is, the $25,000 requested here is the anticipated match requirement to pursue this project and hopefully stabilize that bank, which we've had issues with for many years. Article 18, this is our annual appropriation toward the next dredging project that we'll do. We we tweaked the standing, this is an annual, vote, but we tweaked the language a little bit. The chairman pointed out that the $20,000 a year that we're setting aside obviously won't begin to pay for the dredging itself. But so we've been more specific here that this is, we collect that each year so that when it's time to start doing the design work and spending some of the soft costs, we can get ourselves ready for grants and ready for design. So this is money that is seeded each year so that when we need to start the project in earnest and start doing our studies and our feasibility work, we position ourselves to then pursue state grants and look at what the debt service associated with that will be. Article 19, this is on here as an indirect result of the reprogramming of the MassWorks Hay Barn grant. We have a number of, so later in the warrant, we budget about $8,000 a year. This has been the practice, I think, for 4 years now, to cover some of the ongoing maintenance costs associated with the rail trail, which is one of the most heavily used recreation assets we have in town. Periodically, improvements are required on the trail that exceed the routine maintenance costs. So one of the projects this year that is an issue, there's some serious drainage issues just north of Putnam Park as you pass through the kind of the canyon there where the train used to pass. So with the reprogramming of the MassWorks Hay Barn grant, the $888,000 to be spent this year to develop phase 1 of the rail trail expansion. There's a request here to reprogram some of the funds that were approved at prior town meeting for the purposes of pursuing the trail expansion to be used for some of the capital needs that have been identified by Public Works and the Rail Trail Committee working together with Aaron Henry's department. So essentially what this article will do is there were several votes of town meeting to appropriate funds to pursue grants and to begin the work to do the expansion of the trail. The recommendation here is to ask town meeting to redirect those funds for improvement to the existing trail for identified needs, because as I mentioned, we now have the funding in place to complete phase 1 of the expansion. I feel like I just spent 250 words saying what could have been said in 30, and I apologize for that. The buildings improvement article we reviewed together on the 13th, as well as the grounds improvement article and the various projects that David and Keith and Leaf and Travis and their teams have identified. Article 22, drainage maintenance. Likewise, this was reviewed with the board on the 13th. Article 23 was not reviewed. This is the annual vote that is required, essentially saying that we will not hold the state, that we will hold the state harmless for any damage they do while making drainage improvements within the town of Danvers. Dave McKenna historically voted against this. I believe last year Bill Clark picked up the torch and voted against it on behalf of David. But the brass tacks of it is, if we want the state to come in and make drainage improvements on their property within the town of Danvers, we have to take this vote at town meeting or they won't come. Article 24, this is another standing article. This is the reestablishment of the revolving fund accounts. We have 9 such accounts in Danvers. These accounts are unique creatures of Mass General Law. Essentially, they have designated revenue coming in, and that revenue can be spent on the programs and services described in this article. If the revenue does not come in, then there is no authorization to spend. There are no changes on this list from prior year, with the exception of the preservation fund. The reconstituted preservation fund, which the chairman serves on, voted to approve 2 grant requests this year totaling $90,000 out of that fund. So you'll note on number 8 within this article, the not to exceed is now $10,000, which is the balance in that account. And my understanding is that the original $100,000 for this account came from an agreement that was made when the state hospital was demolished by the state. So there was some of the funds were used to renovate the town hall. There was also some funding put into this account for the purposes of preservation. So that, again, that's the one change you'll see here. The next two articles are articles that we see each year. The first is a recommendation to transfer $1.5 million from our free cash certification into the debt stabilization fund. This is essentially, and I'm going to look to the finance director as I state this, we are, as we've discussed many times, we're concerned looking ahead in terms of what the free cash certification may look like this coming December. So we're moving more of this year's free cash certification into this fund than the plan calls for in anticipation of not being able to make that transfer next year. So there, as we discussed with the debt service budget, $1.83 million is coming out of the debt stabilization fund this year related to the Smith School funding plan. We would be backfilling that with 1.8. The net balance at the end of this town meeting would be 2.5, which is in keeping with the plan that was put in place prior to the approval of the Smith School project. And the next article is our annual contribution to the OPEB trust fund. We have a rolling 5-year funding schedule for this liability. We've been increasing the general fund contribution by $50,000 a year. And this year is no exception. This is one of the priorities to maintain this. This is one of the first things that S&P looks at when they revisit credit ratings and making sure that towns that have financial plans and policies are sticking to those plans and policies. Article 27, a bit of good news. Rodney and his team have been working with Hilltop Advisors, the town's financial advisors, and each year we look at, actually I'm getting ahead of myself, so each year we look at refunding opportunities as a part of the Municipal Modernization Act. We also look at the results of various bond sales, and there are two issues here. You can either complete a project under budget, which creates residual in your account, which we certainly have done, and also the better your credit rating, the more premium the financial institutions are willing to pay in order to secure your debt. So what we have in this article is a combination of savings from the high school project and some bond premiums from recent sales. And the Municipal Modernization Act allows us to use those to essentially pare down debt costs on a moving forward basis. So there's a request here to do just that. And I'm looking to Ronnie to make sure I got that mostly right. But this is a good news story. And then what I was also starting to share, at some point this spring, we will be coming back to the board with a refunding opportunity for some of our existing debt. And based on the interest rates we're looking at today, some considerable savings long-term for restructuring some of our existing debt, which will be a nice thing to have going into the budget season.
So my comment on this article, the way it's written, you got to read it a couple of times to figure out where the funds are coming from. Perhaps in the future, a little chart that shows unexpected proceeds, premiums received, in a chart form like on the back here, perhaps. Would have been a little easier to.
It's a great suggestion. We've gotten ourselves into some trouble in the past that our bond counsel writes these motions. We've attempted to make them a little easier to read, and we've been reprimanded later for doing that. But I think the chart and the explanation itself would make it a lot easier to follow.
On page whatever, at least then you can, at a glance, figure out what it means.
Yep, thank you. Article 28 is the article that I provided to the board tonight. This is something that our electric department has been working with Representative Cairns on. Simply put, the Mass General Law is very prescriptive with respect to municipal electric plants. And Danvers is a 23,000 kV system. And the way that Mass General Law is written, our line workers are not allowed to handle live 23 kV lines using rated best practice gloves without a home rule petition to the legislature blessing that. The department policy is always to try to handle these lines when they are de-energized, but there are occasions when the safest way to work on the system is when those lines are energized and using these gloves. And so this is something that Our health and safety manager in the electric department, as well as our assistant utility director, have advocated for, David Lane has advocated for, and Sally worked with us to develop the language here. And if town meeting sends this on to the legislature and they bless it, it will create a better work environment for our electric employees.
So does this mean that our employees can't use these gloves until the Attorney General approves this article some 90 days in the future?
That is my understanding.
It's too bad. We can't take care of the safety of our workers.
Mr. Chairman, just a thought. We move things to the special town meeting so we don't have to wait till July 1st. Is there an opportunity to move this to the special? I'm sorry, moved it away. We use special town meeting as an opportunity to get things in so we don't have to wait till July 1st. Is there an opportunity that this could go in as a special town meeting warrant article?
So this one wouldn't need to because there's no appropriation. So that we do special town meeting when there's funding involved, because the annual town meeting votes to allow the expenditure of money after July 1st. In this case, we can submit this right away, whether it's in the special.
Okay, and then we'll just wait for the Attorney General's
Correct.
approval.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gardner. Okay, next.
And Article 29 is there each year in case amendments are made during the course of the town meeting that would require budget amendments at the end of town meeting to end town meeting with a balanced budget.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Any questions, any particular article, Gardner?
No.
All set?
No, set.
Okay, Bill?
No, I'm all set.
Thank you. Maureen?
No, all set, thank you.
David? So we're all set. So we can take one motion to approve each article to move forwards with favorable recommendation to FinCom?
That would be fine. Yep, we could take
Thank
one
you.
vote.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept all the articles as presented with a favorable recommendation to FinCom.
Is there a second? Motion and a second discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. Thank you,
you.
Rodney, Steve. A little shorter than other years, I believe, the number of articles.
Yeah, a little shorter.
A little short. Sometimes we get 41.
Well, we still have the zoning town meeting that we had to put on ice in the fall, so we'll be back around later this
We'll
year.
be back
for
with that later? Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we're down to the town manager report to the board on various items of interest. Mr. Town Manager.
No rest for the weary. I have just a couple updates. One, we discussed at the last meeting, and Mr. Chairman, you may already be planning to discuss this under yours, which is the FinCom schedule, and if so, I'll just wait.
I'm sorry.
We were going to discuss the FinCom hearing
Right,
dates.
yeah, we'll get to that.
So I'll hold off on
Thank you.
mentioning that. You did receive, just today, it's not updated, it's the same, but it's the naming policy that we reviewed at our prior meeting. There were two questions at the end of our last meeting. The first was concern raised by Member Mills that Ann Freitas was not feeling undue burden by being targeted as the recipient of queries related to this, and I can assure you that she's perfectly happy to take that on, David. So in the event that people have questions about this policy or the process, they would start with Ann. And the second question had to do with number 3 in the criteria section. This is a section that had been written by the town attorney, and at our last meeting, none of us were quite sure exactly what it was meant to convey, so I modified the wording here a little bit. And the intent here is that if a donor makes a donation associated with a naming opportunity, and later decides that they don't want their name to be used in that way, it can be rescinded, but using the high school fields project, for example, we issue debt based on the legally binding donations that might be made, and so we're making it clear that those are not necessarily refundable in those events. So we would certainly entertain removing somebody's name who no longer wished to have it adorn a building, but if a financial consideration were made as part of that, we wouldn't be refunding that because obviously it would be associated with something that can't be undone. And those were the only two questions that I took away, and I think We know that Dick Moody from the Veterans Council is interested in approaching this board at some point soon. Andrea Daly has inquired about this policy, so I think it's ready. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments the board has. Otherwise, we will share it with our friends and put it on the website and make sure people know about it.
So to David's question, I kind of read it as Ann Freitas won't be with us forever. So do we have to change it if she leaves, this last paragraph? Or can we add?
It's like a generic secretary.
Yeah, we
rather
can
than-
do two things. So it wouldn't be the first or the last time that a person's name appears on a document. We would either adjust it at that time, or, you know, in this case, we talked earlier tonight, we have a generic town clerk at danversma.gov. So I'll discuss that tomorrow with Ann. We don't need to decide that tonight. It'll either stay the same, or we can replace it with a generic email.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
Yep.
in the future.
That's a good point.
Okay. Board members have any questions?
There are some, yes. thank you.
Please.
There are some policy issues here, and who is the enforcement arm of the policy?
Go ahead, your microphone.
Oh, thank you. Who is the enforcement arm of the policy if an action has to be taken, or does it come back before the board?
It would come before the board.
Okay. So, for example, you know, number one, on the second page, under criteria, if something happened to happen, we need to remove a name for some reason, would the enforcement of that happen immediately by the town manager and then come before the board, or would the board decide?
Are you talking about with the removal of a name?
Yep.
That would come back before the board.
Thank you.
All set?
I am.
Anybody else?
That's it.
Everybody seems to be in agreement. Steve, what do you need?
I don't need anything.
Okay, we can move forwards with this?
I think we'll move forward with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What else?
Not a new item, but you did receive a copy in your packets of the Housing Authority letter that went out, along with the form for tenants who wish to be considered for appointment by this board. Nothing to be done tonight, just sharing that. And then just briefly, I had sent an update to you back on March 25th, some various personnel updates. It's been a busy spring, and I wanted to give an update as well tonight. So I'll just kind of start from the top. Our new health director started yesterday, Ade Solarin. He was formerly the health director in Oak Bluffs, and up until coming to Danvers, was serving as the deputy director of the Health and Inspections Department in the city of Somerville. Lives in Lynn. We met for an hour or so on Monday to go over kind of where we've been with respect to COVID and what we see lying ahead. He's had a chance to interface with at least one of the health board members, and we're working to onboard him. But I'm very excited to have him on board. Within the electric department, we had a vacancy. Our director of engineering operations accepted a position in Belmont, and we made an internal promotion. Jason Small, one of our longtime systems engineers, he applied for and was accepted to take that promotion and join the management team. Jason has a really interesting background. He worked for the private sector in electric. He also serves as a light board member in his community where he lives. And he is now a manager within the Danvers Electric, so brings a really unique perspective, and it's been a seamless transition having him. As I mentioned earlier in the evening, we do have an assessment center scheduled for April 14th for police chief and likely a captain, although a lieutenant certainly, based on civil service law, has the ability to compete for the chief's position, and I believe one, if not two, lieutenants will in fact be going through both of the assessments. Once that assessment is complete, the scores are provided to the civil service, and we wait. They get verified and returned to the town, and then interviews are conducted. Usually between 30 and 60 days is generally the turnaround time at that point. So realistically, by sometime between mid-May and mid-June, we'll be able to complete that process. I had mentioned in an email our longtime employee, Peter Korpusek, who started for the town almost 50 years ago as an equipment operator, rose through the ranks and became the DPW business manager after Lenny Marshall retired, has decided that he's ready to retire later this year. The good news is he gave David, Lane, and I an indication that this was likely coming about a year ago, and we were able to use an existing vacancy in that department to hire an assistant business manager, Angelica Medina, who's been a great addition. When Peter retires, she will be stepping in as the acting before we go through a process, which she clearly will have the inside track on, but we'll conduct a process as we always do. And Peter has indicated that he's happy to stick around and help out after he retires. But he will be a loss. It was interesting during budget every year to talk to him because he remembers operating the old Snow Beast that was purchased back, I believe, in the 1960s. And I'm looking to Bill to
Try 77.
Okay, 77. But he brings a lot of institutional knowledge that he brings. And then...
Sorry, 79, excuse me.
Okay.
This is 78.
So we had second-round interviews this week for the vacant building inspector position. Really interesting candidates. I expect that by the next meeting I'll have an announcement to make with respect to that position. We're recruiting chief assessor. Stephen Poulos, as we mentioned at a previous meeting, was recruited to become the finance director in Marblehead. And his new boss, the town administrator there, tells me he's doing great work. But in the meantime, we've asked Bruce Sims to come out of semi-retirement and work for us. Thanks to the emergency declaration by the governor, the number of hours that retirees can work is currently out the window. So basically, Bruce is going to come in and do a little bit of everything and just support the rest of the office to keep things moving forward. And he's agreed to do that until a permanent chief assessor is hired, which is immensely helpful because we want to make sure that we get the right person to take that position. And last, obviously, Jen McGeorge has been the acting library director since January when Alex Lent accepted a position to go back to Western Massachusetts. And we will be working with the library trustees this month to start to assist them in their process to recruit their next library director. So very busy on that front. But I wanted to give the board an update from the last correspondence we had. And just briefly, I don't have a specific update on this tonight, but we are, the schools are back in person. We are continuing to monitor COVID cases. Unfortunately, Danvers, like the broader Commonwealth, is starting to see an uptick again in cases. We're seeing that internally as well. But we are, as we onboard our new health director, we're going to be having discussions in the next couple of weeks about the months ahead. And one of the concerns that we're looking at right now, we know from experience that we saw upticks in cases locally coming out of Thanksgiving, coming out of the New Year, coming out of the February break. And obviously there's another school break coming up next week. The weather's starting to get nice. We're seeing vaccines are coming, but we're starting to see fewer. I think people are reaching, as the weather gets nice, they're starting to feel like it's time to get back to normal, and we're not there yet. And related to that, I was on a very positive call last week. The MAPC is coordinating on behalf of the North Shore and working with a marketing firm to help with some messaging heading into the summer about having a safe summer on the North Shore. So you can watch for some snazzy social media and some public information coming out of that effort, which I think will be immensely helpful looking ahead. That's all that I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Before we go on, do you know the times of the FinCom meetings and how they're meeting?
7 p.m. starts and in person.
In person?
In this space.
Okay. So while we're at it, I asked last time everybody could look at their calendars to pick a date to represent this board at a FinCom meeting. I am not available the 12th or the 13th, so if anybody can...
Mr. Chairman, can you remind us what the dates are?
April 12,
Yep.
13, 15, and then 26 and 27, which would probably be the warrant.
I would volunteer to do the 12th. The other dates have committee meetings.
Gardner, the 12th, thank you. David?
Let me just look, Dan.
13, 15, 26, and 27. Like
Mr.
David's
Chairman, if
looking.
I could just, while David is looking, the 12th, the 13th, and the 26th are the firm dates. There's a chance that the 15th and the 27th won't be required, but we are assuming that we'll need those at this point.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, Maureen, do you have a choice?
Right now, I'm going to say the 26th.
Okay. So we need to firm up the 13th. Bill, are you interested?
No, but I'll do it if you, I think you need it.
You'll
Not
be
that
your
I'm
la-
cashing out, but.
You'll be your last hurrah, the 13th?
Uh,
Or do you want to take the 15th, which might be a maybe?
I'll do the 4th, I guess the 13th. I haven't looked ahead of my schedule, but I've got a pretty free schedule right now.
The 13th will be Bill, okay.
I'll take the 15th.
David?
It's 7 o'clock in this room.
Correct.
That's correct, on the 15th, David. And Ann will remind us all. So I'll take the 27th if needed, and I may join you, Maureen, on the 26th, but you'll be representing the board.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
And that's, remember, baby comments or something.
Yep, that's fine. So,
Okay, all
on the 26th, I'll be
Yeah.
there if you
Okay.
can't make it.
Yep.
That'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, set, Mr. Manager, on that?
Yep, thank you.
That's great, thank you. The consent calendar.
Make a motion, we accept the consent calendar as presented.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Is- Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We'll go to correspondence, new business, public business updates, closing comments. Maureen?
Let's see, new business. It looks like the, thank you to the town workers to take care of the rail trail, where the culvert was on Holton Street. A lot of work, a lot of expense for our town, but, you know, the rail trail committee's, you know, thankful for that. What other new business? Danvers House and Authority seems to be doing pretty well. A lot of the seniors have been vaccinated, so that's really great news. Cindy Dunn and her team does a great job. I think that's about it right now, Dan. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Maureen. David?
Nothing, thank you, Dan.
Gardner?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Bill?
Just an observation that Mr. Farrell was down Hobart Street measuring the length of the street, and I'm assured by Mr. Lane that it's going to be ground down and resurfaced relatively soon. It's going to lose its reputation for being the bumpiest, roughest street in town. It probably was better back in the colonial days when it was all dirt. I do have one serious commemoration to mention tonight. We did lose a very dedicated town employee in the last couple of weeks. Lisa Bucco, who was the children's librarian in the library, passed away. Relatively young woman. She was very active in the library, and she was also very active up on the Topsfield Fair. Great person, great family, and it's a big loss for our community and their family.
Thank you, Bill. And I have nothing other than to remember the vets. And at this time, the board will vote to adjourn to executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate, as the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and not to return to public sessions. David?
Yes.
Gardner?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And Dan, yes as well. So we'll go into executive session after we take a short break and allow DCAT time to clean up the room.
Yes, sir.